Iridium. I've got my favourite Iridium with me, Mark Cloer. How you doing, mate?
Good, man. I'm the OG Iridium.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you're the original. You are the original idiot. How you doing, man? I hope you've been doing all right.
Yeah, I'm good. I sent you a message the other day to remind you in case you forgot, but 1 year and 2 days ago, when we first did our first video, that Striper video. Hard to believe it's been a year. Doesn't seem like it's been that long.
I don't know. I don't know. I was thinking when you sent me that, because there's been so much going on.
Yeah.
It sort of feels like it might have been longer. I don't know. We've packed so much in.
Yeah.
To the year that it's sort of that part of it. The chat. It seems 5 minutes ago with other things, but with the channel, it just I don't know. It seems like it's been going for quite a while to me. But no, it's been
hard to believe it's been that long to me. And to be honest, I figured it was going to be a one-off thing. I had no idea it would turn into what it has, and it's been a blast, and I've enjoyed every minute of it.
It's been brilliant, man. It has, and
I've had a few changes over the
nothing to do with me, but yeah, very cool haircut you're sporting there, mate. I've got to admit, for anyone who hasn't already seen you on the live stream, wow, look at that. Absolutely brilliant. Yeah, you've definitely done the right thing there anyway, mate, in my opinion. So, okay. I mean, one of the first things we did, it weren't the first video we did because we did Striper, didn't we? The best tracks or something, top 10, 12 or whatever it was. But we did a discussing the classics, which I started ages ago, but sort of didn't do any for quite a while. I've done one actually with Darren this morning, and now we're going to do this one, but or last night. But we did discussing the classics, didn't we, together? And we did Heaven and Hell, didn't we?
That was the second one we did, yeah.
All right, yeah. So there you go. So we're back to discussing the classics, and this is one that we've got a massive love for, which at the time especially, and even now at times, people disregard it.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason it is, and I don't really know what it is. All I can say, because I'm going to let you give a little detail on it, all I can say is that people disregard this album because it doesn't sound particularly like a Black Sabbath album. That's all I can say. Apart from that, if you actually take the merits of the album itself, I don't want to upset any Black Sabbath fans or Ozzy fans or even Tony Martin fans, but I messaged you the other day, didn't I? And I said it's my fourth favourite Sabbath album.
Yeah.
I'll let you guess which ones are my 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, I have a feeling I
know. But yeah, you give us a bit of background on this album, mate, and the backstory of it and how it came about, and some bit of detail on it.
Well, of course, we're talking about Seventh Star from 1986. Sabbath, after Dio left, just entered a really bad time. Of course, it brought in Ian Gillan for Born Again. And I think they knew that was probably a one-off project anyway, because the Deep Purple reunion always, was a possibility and hung in the horizon. It was just a matter of when. So when Gillan returned to Deep Purple, Sabbath tried to reconvene, and they toyed with the idea of different vocalists around this time. They auditioned Ron Keel. That didn't work out. Allegedly, Michael Bolton, of all people, auditioned, sent in an audition tape, and they liked what they heard enough to bring him in for an audition. But back then, he was actually doing rock music. He was in a band called Blackjack with Bruce Kulick from Kiss. But anyway, they didn't feel his image or persona was heavy enough for Sabbath, so they passed on Michael Bolton.
What about Tom Jones? Was that April Fools that Tom?
Yeah,
Jones?
that was an April Fool's joke. I remember hearing that one. Yeah, I don't think that was ever seriously consideration, but yeah. Anyway, then they brought in a guy from LA named David Donato in '84. Did some demos with him, and then again, for whatever reason, didn't work out. Eventually, Geezer left. Bill Ward left again, and it was just down to Tony. And Tony, just rightfully so, got sick of the revolving door, and he just came up with the idea that he was going to do a solo album. His original idea was to bring in, much like he did on the 2000 album, his original idea was to bring in different vocalists. And some of the names that were tossed around that he wanted to play with were Robert Plant, David Coverdale, Glenn Hughes, Rob Halford. He wanted Dio to come back and do a song or two. For contractual reasons, that did not pan out. So he set out to find a singer again. One of the singers that came around for a while was named Jeff Fenholt. He had been best known for the Broadway production of Jesus Christ Superstar in the early 70s. And he was, according to Sabbath, he was a lot better off than they were financially when he became involved with them, because he had made a lot of money on that Jesus Christ Superstar project. But anyway, they brought him in. Allegedly, Tony had been given a tape of Fenholt's work with Joshua, which you and I both
great
agreed was a very good album. So Tony liked Fenholt's voice, so they brought him in, and he was there, by all accounts, he was there from December of 1984 to about May of 1985. Tony didn't have a band at this point, and he was involved with, or actually engaged with, Lita Ford at the time. So she offered her rhythm section to Tony for his solo project. So Eric Singer, who was Lita's touring drummer at the time, came on board, and her bassist was named Gordon Copley. So they came in to help Tony on his solo album. And of course, Jeff Nichols, who had been there since about 1980, was there as well. And Jeff was heavily involved in this album as far as writing lyrics and melodies. Tony, of course, came up with the riffs, but Jeff Nichols poured his heart and soul into this album. In fact, I would say this is truthfully as much of a Jeff Nichols album as it is a Tony Iommi album. But the two Jeffs, Jeff Nichols and Jeff Fenholt, wrote lyrics, and they came up with an idea that the album was going to be called Star of India. This is a bootleg, but it was eventually released. The demos were released 20 plus years ago now. But anyway, Fenholt didn't work out for whatever reason. There's different ideas why he left. So here Tony was with a pretty close to a finished album and no singer, which this wasn't the first time this wasn't the last time this would happen. So somewhere along the line, the idea of Glenn Hughes came about. Tony and Glenn had known each other for years anyway. Back in the early days of Sabbath, Glenn was in a band called Trapeze, and they played around the same areas and shared the same stages. And then, of course, Glenn and Coverdale went on to replace Ian Gillan and Deep Purple, and they all ran in the same circles. So Glenn and Tony had known each other for years anyway. Glenn was in pretty bad shape during this time. He had severe drug problems. He was overweight. He had emotional problems, but he agreed to join Tony's solo project. And Glenn has stated emphatically that if he had known in the beginning that this would end up being a Black Sabbath album, he would have declined. But being a Tony Iommi album, he thought he could get his head wrapped around that. So they came in, they redid all the vocals or redid all the lyrics. They couldn't use Jeff Fenholt's lyrics, obviously. So Glenn and Jeff Nichols rewrote the lyrics, and they came up with what would have been Star of India was now called Seventh Star. Somewhere along the line, Glenn was informed that it was not going to be a Tony Iommi solo album. It was going to be a Black Sabbath album. And he lost his mind when he heard this because he was just terrified of having to sing Ozzy songs, having to sing Dio songs. Glenn did not consider himself a heavy metal kind of guy. He was more blues, funk oriented type background. But being that he and Tony were good mates, he finally agreed to give it a go. So it was released as a Black Sabbath featuring Tony Iommi album.
I know.
Which was kind of an odd way to label an album.
Yeah.
I forgot to mention somewhere along in the recording, the original bass player Gordon Copley left. They brought in a guy named Dave Spitz, who was the brother of Dan Spitz from Anthrax. So the recording lineup of Seventh Star was Tony Iommi, Glenn Hughes, Jeff Nichols, Eric Singer, and Dave Spitz. This is Eric Singer's recording debut, and I think he did a phenomenal job.
I mean, with all that, I know people, like we've just spoken about, the album not being highly rated, but I really can't see where that's coming from. I from the beginning, I've loved this album, and I just want to say that magazine Kerrang, which you know what I think about what it's become, it gave it, which was rare, 4 marks, 5 out of 5 Ks as they called them back then. It said it was a absolutely amazing album, and I got it on the strength of that, because I didn't revisit Sabbath from Live Evil onwards. When once Dio went, I was like, yeah, okay, Live Evil was excellent. Remember, we're only young. I was 16 years old when this album came out, but I knew the Dio albums. I loved it. But I didn't, the Gillan one, didn't even hear it. Do you know what I mean? The Gillan one was after Dio went, wasn't it? And then this was the next one, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I just got it on the strength of the Kerrang review, and it blew me away, man. It blew me away. I just think it's so strong, this album, and sounds like amazing production-wise.
Yeah, I forgot to mention the producer was named Jeff Glixman. And I think, like you touched on, it doesn't sound like a traditional Black Sabbath album because honestly, it wasn't intended to be a Black Sabbath album. Tony was obviously very influenced by blues and jazz, and that's kind of the flavor that he wanted to inject into his solo project. He wanted to distance himself from the demons and dragons and the satanic type stuff, and do something different. And that was, in the beginning, that was his intention, was this to be his solo album. So of course it doesn't sound exactly like you know, a Black Sabbath album. There are songs on here that as we go, I'll probably, if I can remember, I'll touch on that I can imagine other Sabbath singers singing.
I don't want anyone who hasn't actually heard this album, and most people who will click on this and now see Black Sabbath, they would know this album or know of it or heard it.
Yeah.
What Mark was saying there, what you were saying there, mate, about blues and jazz, I don't want anyone to think it's I mean, there's blues elements in this.
Sure.
A couple of the songs, aren't there?
Sure.
Elements.
Sure.
But it's a heavy album.
Oh yeah, it's metal. There's no doubt about it. It's 80s heavy metal. I wouldn't call it anything else. But he just, like I said, he wanted to go in a slightly different direction and kind of spread his wings, so to speak. And Glenn Hughes was the perfect singer to do that, because Glenn, like I said earlier, had that soul funk inspired vocal style in a lot of his projects, including Deep Purple. But when he came into Sabbath, whatever you want to call it, he kind of put all that on the back burner and he just used his full rock voice. And I think he did an amazing job.
This is my favorite vocal performance, also by Glenn.
I agree 100%. Every other project he's done, he was kind of known or nicknamed the White Stevie Wonder because of the way he sang and the type of material that he, especially the stuff he did on some of his early solo albums. It was, straight off the R&B train. But when he got involved with Naomi, he had already proved he could do that prior to this. He was with Gary Moore. Yeah. And did the Run for Cover album, and there was some pretty heavy stuff on there. He kept that funk, toned down on that album as well. But he was and still is an amazing singer. And even during this time, like I said, this was probably his worst point in time, as far as he was just in bad shape mentally, physically, emotionally. But even being in the shape he was in, his vocals were just incredible. Yeah. In fact, Jeff Nichols says that Glenn sang the majority of this album sitting in a chair. And to think he could generate that kind of vocal power just chilling out in a chair is pretty amazing. And, and the fact that he was probably stoned the whole time he did it, because he was big time into coke at the time.
Yeah.
So it's
just amazing
what he did.
Amazing vocal performance. And obviously the health issues, and we're going to get onto each track. We're going to take it in turns and talk about it. But obviously, before we do that, it sort of ended as soon as it started, really. Didn't it?
Oh, and I forgot to mention, I remember when we did the Heaven and Hell, when we briefly talked about the album cover. This is the main artwork, and of course they superimposed a picture of Tony over that, but this was taken from a 16th century piece of artwork called the Temptation of Saint Anthony. And of course they overlay a picture of Tony Iommi over that as a background. So Saint Anthony was tormented in the Egyptian desert by demons. And in essence, Tony was tormented by the ghost of Black Sabbath. Ghost of past glory. So that's where that artwork comes in.
I've got to say though, that poster behind you, the other side of you, that's quite a cool picture. I remember that. Is that on the back of the album, isn't it? Or is it?
Yeah, that was just a promotional shot. And if you notice, this is the only time in the history of Black Sabbath that Jeff Nichols was shown in photos, and he was credited as being a full band member. He had always been listed as keyboard player, but usually in small letters, under Ozzy, Dio, or whoever. Well, Ozzy wasn't in the band when he first came on, but he was so heavily involved in this album that he rightfully so, he put his foot down and he said, I wrote, a good portion of this album. I want to be on stage, which they always had him pushed to the side of the stage in the background.
Yeah.
And I want to be in photos. So they allowed him to join the band as an official member for photos for this album. So at least for one album, he got his props. So.
No, I remember that picture because that picture must have appeared. I've seen that either in Kerrang or because I remember that. It's a good, it's a really good band shot actually.
Yeah.
It's a really cool band shot. So yeah, and then of course they went on tour, didn't they? And it didn't last long, did it? I think it was.
Yeah, Glenn, reluctantly agreed to do the tour, and he only lasted 5 shows before they had to move on. And there's, aside from just not being into the material, the older material that he was going to have to do, he had actually gotten into a altercation with one of Sabbath's stage managers, the road managers. And when he was all coked up, and the guy ended up punching him straight in the nose, and it cracked a bone. Actually, it cracked a bone in his eye socket, and fluid ran down into his nasal cavity. And anyway, he could barely sing. So that was part of the reason. Part of the reason he had a hard time on stage is just, he didn't enjoy doing this type of material. He was in bad shape anyway, but then he had this pretty bad injury he had to deal with that was allowing blood and mucus and everything to run down into his vocal cords. And so at one show in particular, I've got a friend up in Massachusetts that actually saw him. I think it was the last show they did before they booted him. But he said Glenn could barely make a sound. And according to him, Jeff Nichols was helping Glenn with vocals.
Oh, fuck me.
They were trying to keep it on the down low, but he said he could see him on the side of the stage singing while Glenn was basically
surviving.
Jeff Nichols singing the lyrics.
Oh,
it was a mess.
But to top it all, I mean, I remember Tony Iommi having a bit of a dig at Glenn Hughes in the press after, saying that he kept catching him in the backstage with Mars bars because he was so big.
Yeah.
Having a dig at him in the press as well, man. I mean, I'm surprised. Glenn Hughes has come well out of it, isn't he? I mean, look at him now. He's skinny and he's looks fit, and his vocals haven't seemed to have changed at all.
Yeah, he's one of the fortunate ones. He's, for all the damage he did to his body, his voice has not suffered at all. And then you got people like Vince Neil that can barely carry a tune.
Yeah.
And Glenn, he was as bad as any of them. As far I've got his biography, or his autobiography, and I mean he was as bad as anybody as far as the drug abuse. He didn't play around. He was a full-blown addict for a lot of years, and by the grace of God, he came out on the right side. So props to him for that.
It's just mad, man. We're talking about this album that we both love, and just to think how it sounds. And I mean, and we did say just quickly about the production there. It's a huge production. The drum sound is one of the best I've ever heard on a Sabbath record. It's huge, a huge sound. It's so pounding.
Yeah.
It's just mad on certain tracks as well. It's just huge, isn't it? It's just mental. But we are going to get onto the track by track, obviously. And there's not that many to talk about here, actually, is there? So you've only got, is it 9 tracks? But one of them's a...
Yeah, you got a little instrumental interlude there.
But yeah, I mean, unless you've got anything else to say about you got anything else about the actual production of the album, mate, or the way it was made? We get onto the track by track, if you like.
Yeah, I think I'm ready to roll with it.
Cool, absolutely brilliant. So, Mark, you're going to kick us off with track 1. I'm going to take the even numbers.
My poster's falling.
Oh, where do you keep all your posters, by the way? Well,
They're actually on my bedroom wall.
Excellent.
They have been for a lot of years.
Oh, mate, brilliant. So, well, track one, mate, you got to talk about it, but it's a stormer. In for the Kill.
Yeah, In for the Kill, the pedal to the metal, like you were talking about drum sound. It starts off with this incredible drum sound. Like I said, this is Eric Singer's very first recording, and he just did an incredible job. But it's a very fast-paced. I could kind of imagine Dio, maybe the Dio era, doing this song.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
It's got a Neon Nights type of pace. Turn Up the Night, you know, those faster Dio songs, kind of got that vibe to it. Lyrically, according to what Jeff Nichols said, it was lyrically about Vlad the Impaler and his armies just laying waste to their enemies. And he said also it deals with the accountability that mankind will face in the Armageddon. So they always, regardless of who the singer was, they always had that, you know, double meaning or cryptic type lyrics that you could interpret different ways. Yeah, very fast. I think this is a Sabbathy song. You know, talking about some of the album does not sound like Black Sabbath. This could, like I said, have fit on probably more so Mob Rules.
I agree. Yeah.
Than Heaven and Hell, but yeah, great way to kick off an album.
Mate, I don't think if you actually look at all the tracks on this album, there's not another one that would have been a better start.
Yeah.
It's
you
just
want to keep the door wide open and get it going. This is the one to do it with.
Amazing, sort of fast galloping.
Yeah,
man, absolutely fantastic. Swashbuckling, even, isn't it? It's like
that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant track. I love it. What an excellent song. Well, I'm going to go to the second track, which is No Stranger to Love.
I gave you my heart. You cried for my soul.
Now, this has taken a little bit of stick over the years, a little bit. Even a little while ago, I read about someone giving this a bit of stick, and on its own as a song, I think it's brilliant.
Yeah.
Obviously, as a Sabbath song, that's where people probably judge it from.
Yeah.
Now, the beginning, for me, I don't know what you think about this, mate, is not too dissimilar to Die Young. It's got that synthesizer or keyboard.
I hadn't thought about it, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah, that sort of lead guitar that they had in all across the Heaven and Hell record that we've spoken about before. And then it's a ballad, obviously, and this was a single. But I think it's a brilliant. There's only one thing about this song. I don't understand what the chorus means. Living on the streets, I'm no stranger to love. It's like they've sort of thrown an 80s lyric together. Living on the streets, I'm no stranger to love. It's the only nitpick I'd have. I love the song. As a song, I absolutely, I think I mentioned it, or you did, in our ballad shows as a great shot song. One of the best of the 80s, in my opinion. But lyrically, yeah, it's got that 80s thrown together lyric a little bit. But it's a brilliant song, man. It's just got so much atmosphere. This is where Glenn Hughes does turn his little bit of soulful voice on here a bit, innit? But I just think it's an absolutely superb ballad, and obviously, I think that's where the stick comes from, don't you? Where it's a bit different.
Yeah, and I don't think this was the right song to release as the only single. I think there are other songs that would have had a bigger impact if they wanted to release this one. Because usually, you know, back then when a band would release, they would release a single that would be more of an up tempo, and then they would later release a ballad. So you kind of covered both bases.
Yeah.
But this is the only one that they had a video for, and only one that was really promoted. So I don't know that it was the best choice to introduce the album.
And mate, if you look at some of the songs that we're going to speak about that could have been singles.
Yeah. I think a lot of, I like the song. Jeff Nichols, again, wrote, he said when he first came up with the idea for this song, or the structure of the song, he was trying to get a Foreigner, I Want to Know What Love Is type of vibe. And you can certainly hear that. This is one of the songs that they had originally worked up with Jeff Fenholt. There's on this demo bootleg, there's a version on it. They called it at the time Dark Side of Love. And then some other bootlegs listed as Take My Heart. But it's the same song as far as music, melody. But again, you know, you're talking about the kind of cheesy lyrics.
Yeah.
Jeff Nichols said it was really hard to scrap all the lyrics.
I can imagine. Yeah.
When Fenholt was in the band. So they had to start from scratch and do it pretty quickly to get this album done. So that could be why some of the lyrics aren't, you know, what they could have been, because they originally had other ideas and they had to totally scrap them and then come up with a whole new, you know, set of lyrics. So that could be part of the reason for what.
Well, to tell you the truth, there's nothing lyrically, there's nothing else on the album that sticks out to me that's bad at all. It's just that one line, but it sounds like a typical 80s lyric, doesn't it? Living on the streets, I'm no stranger to love. It's just like, you know, but it's a very cool ballad. Tugs at the heartstrings a little bit, if you ask me. Very, very cool indeed. Really emotional.
The video was a pretty big budget video that they did. The girl in the video was her name was Denise Crosby. She was the niece of Bing Crosby.
Oh, right.
And I think she was an actress. I think she had done some Star Trek or something, something along those lines. Anyway, she was the female love interest in the video, and they had Jeff Nichols dressed up like a policeman. Tony Iommi, forlorn, lost in the city, and it was just a kind of a cheesy video, but you know, we are talking about 1986. So.
Oh yeah. Okay then, mate. That's my one done. Well, next is Turn to Stone.
Yeah, Turn to Stone's another pretty fast rocker. This is another one that existed with Fenholt. They originally called it Eye of the Storm. And you can hear all these on YouTube if you want to go back and listen to them. You can hear the original versions. And keep in mind, they were demos. They're not polished. And some of the vocals or some of the lyrics, you know, were not there. But anyway, Turn to Stone, I think, that's another one that I can imagine Dio doing. The subject matter, especially, I take it to mean Medusa, the evil woman who, you know, when she's scorned, you'll turn to stone.
Yeah.
And that sounds like a very Dio-esque type of lyric to me. You know, he loved the evil women. He loved to write about the evil women. So this one to me again could have been a Dio era song, but pretty fast rocker.
This is probably out of all the songs, and I love this album, it's probably my least favorite. And I think it reminds me of maybe Dio era, but maybe Dio even further back, like Rainbow, or even Deep Purple. That's fast Deep Purple type song. Because I might be going mad here, but Glenn Hughes, I know he was in Deep Purple, but his voice slightly reminds me of Ian Gillan as well. He's got that, I don't know, sometimes when he sings certain phrases, he reminds me a little bit of Ian Gillan. I might be going mad there, but he does his tone a little bit. I know he can't, you know, it's different but it's sort of sometimes when I hear him singing certain words, it sounds similar. And I think, like, you know, it does remind me a little bit of Deep Purple as well. They're faster stuff, you know. They had some of them rocking tracks. It reminds me a little bit of them. But you know, that's especially, and like you said, I didn't think about Dio, but yeah, maybe Dio with Rainbow, especially, that they did some of them fast sort of tracks like that. But
it may, like I said, it may just be the subject, the lyrical content, maybe why I'm associating it with Dio. But you know, some of these songs, like you say, this might be my. I like every song on it. There's not a song on the album I don't like.
I do as well. I do as well.
I had to rank them like you do often. This might be my least favorite. So I had to go back and listen a little more in depth to a few of these. But as I listened to and read the lyrics, I just remember thinking that could have been a Dio lyric.
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
You know, I'm thinking could have been a, you know, again, a Mob Rules era type song maybe.
Totally agree, mate. Totally agree. No, that's cool. So for track 4 is the Sphinx. Talking about Sphinx, the cat ain't even appeared yet, but the Guardian in brackets.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna take that and Seventh Star because it's like an intro in it to Seventh Star, if you like.
There's no shelter from the heat. There's no mercy from this land.
Yeah, so we had a little chat, didn't we? You said, because it's just an intro track, there's no point in me talking about the actual track because it's literally just an introduction to the title track. But I mean, it is quite a cool introduction, isn't it?
And they had done this for a while.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
You know, they always had these little instrumental interludes that they put before songs. Hell, on Born Again, they had 2 of them. They had the one they called The Dark, and they had the one they called Stonehenge. And I think that was just to give Jeff Nichols something to do, because Jeff was not an upfront keyboard player like a John Lord or Don Airey, which Black Sabbath definitely did not need.
Yeah.
I think Jeff Nichols was the perfect. There we go. I think Jeff Nichols was the perfect keyboard player for Black Sabbath. He added what needed to be added and didn't overdo it. He was there almost as much for sound effects as he was actual keyboard. He didn't, you know, come out with the big Hammond organ that I know you love.
Yeah,
I think these were just kind of a little something to showcase Jeff and let him know that he was, you know, he was appreciated enough to give him a little spot on the album somewhere. But
it's quite cool though. I mean, it's definitely brings up the atmosphere to lead into that Seventh Star track.
Yeah, it's kind of like totally off topic, but it's kind of like The Abyss with Stryper.
Yes, To Hell with the Devil. Yeah,
it's the perfect intro.
Definitely.
Perfect intro for Seventh Star. Yeah.
It definitely is. And Seventh Star as a track, I love it. I absolutely love it. It's got, well, you know me and the pace of songs, don't you? You know, I've actually found it out since I've done the channel that the more I listen to songs, the more I like that slow to medium paced sort of tracks. It's just it's probably why Turn to Stone for me isn't my least favorite because of the speed of it. It's probably the fastest song on the album. But Seventh Star is a brilliant, and I'd say plodding. I don't mean anything negative by that because that's what Sabbath have done, isn't it, in the past? But it's just got a brilliant riff that just keeps going. The pace doesn't really change. It's not a really long song, but it's got that epic feel, isn't it, of a long song. And I love the atmosphere they brought to this song and that Middle Eastern vibe they've got running through it. And lyrically as well. I've written some actually lyrics down here, which I don't usually do, but which, you know, we talk about, don't we, about lyrics and songs, putting visions in our minds of being somewhere or transporting you to, and that's what this one does. It literally makes you feel the heat of the desert, because there's some brilliant lyrics like there's no shelter from the heat, no mercy from this land. Hear 1,000 chanting souls waiting judgment from God's hand. That's pretty cool, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean I mean, to think that they had to get these lyrics as well last minute or whatever. That, I mean, they make you think, don't they? Those lyrics, that's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. They've also got, near the end of this, what Sabbath do quite a bit on their songs, especially I think probably in the Dio era and Tony Martin era. They've got that the backing vocals that sort of which it adds the effect,
right,
again, which I love.
Yeah.
A bit creepy, isn't it? It's a little bit creepy and very cool indeed. And even Dio carried on doing that on some of his earlier albums as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, love Seventh Star, mate. What do you reckon of that track?
Well, this was originally called Star of India with Jeff Fenholt, and both versions of the song have very similar. They both come from the book of Revelation in the Bible. Again, this was Jeff Nichols' idea for the most part. He was, even though he wasn't a Christian, he was fascinated by theology, if I can get the word right. And it was based on, like I said, the seventh star is another. It was used as a reference to Satan before he was cast out of heaven. The way Nichols interpreted it. He was called the morning star before he was cast out of heaven and became Lucifer, the devil. And it also references, in Revelation, it talks about 7 stars aligning, bringing about the beginning of Armageddon. So again, the lyrics you just mentioned about waiting judgment from God's hand, that plays into the to the Armageddon,
very cool
side of it.
Very cool.
But yeah, pretty deep lyrics for a band like this. And again, I don't know how long it took them to rewrite, the lyrics from the time Fenholt left in May of, he left in May of '85. This album was released, I believe it was in August of '85. If I remember correctly. I didn't write the date down, but I think it was
that ain't long, is it? Really,
no,
think about how long it takes bands these days to get things together.
Yeah, and then keep in mind, during the middle of this, the original Black Sabbath reunited at Live Aid. That was in July. And there was a real possibility of them having a full-fledged reunion. I think that's what Tony was hoping for.
Yeah.
When he signed up to do that. But of course, Ozzy at that point didn't have any interest in doing a reunion.
No.
So during the middle of all this, they had Live Aid with the original lineup again. That fell through again. So then, Tony scrambled around to finish this album, and it became the 12th Black Sabbath album, even though he originally wanted to do it. Very convoluted time for Tony Iommi. I mean, you got to give him credit for sticking to his guns, because he's the only one that kept the boat afloat. Everybody else bailed on him, and he could have just totally given it up and probably joined another band as a hired gun. But he kept wanting to do his own thing, and I give him props, and I'm glad he did.
Oh yeah.
I love everything they've done. After. So.
Yeah.
Another thing about this song, I don't know if you've ever picked up on it, but it also has a vibe that reminds me of Cashmere, Led Zeppelin.
Yeah, and we all know there's lots of metal songs since Cashmere, and there that have had that. But yeah, that sort of, without a doubt.
I'm just like you. I'm not the biggest Zeppelin fan in the world, but I do like that song, and I can hear some influence, I guess, whether it was intentional or not. I hear a vibe there that reminds me of that.
Yeah, I mean, I hear that now with bands now. Occasionally, I just stumble across a song that sounds like that. But yeah, it's difficult in metal, mate, isn't it? For after all these years to not stumble across something or sound like something, I suppose, but maybe intentional, maybe. Now, this is an interesting one. The next one, mate. Danger Zone.
This is probably to me, well, other than probably No Stranger to Love, this is the most commercial sounding song to me on the album. This to me should have been the single.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Very, very commercial. I mean, it's still heavy, but it's got that 80s, mid 80s pop sensibility to it, while remaining, Black Sabbath. Again, a masterful performance by Glenn Hughes. This is another one that existed. Finn Holt's version was called Chance on Love. They changed the melodies around, but that initial riff was the same.
That riff, man.
Yeah, it's so infectious.
It's brilliant, man.
Lyrically, I think the drug subject matter was probably the intention here. Glenn Hughes, again, he was struggling with his drug addictions, and the danger zone that he referred to, I think they were talking about drug addiction. I'm gonna live or die in the danger zone,
Yeah.
And there was also some references to one of the books I've got talked about damnation. So drugs and damnation, I think, was the lyrical content of this one. But yeah, just a very almost poppy sounding song. This would have been a good radio hit, I think, or could have been if they had released it as a single, but for whatever reason.
I think this could be the least sounding Sabbath song on this album.
Yeah.
But it's a fucking brilliant song though, on its own merits. It's an absolutely catchy, and it's got some heavy bits and all. It's obviously got that drum sound that's just mental across this album. I love the song.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, it's a brilliant song. Okay, mate. For the next one, see this along with Turn to Stone. And you know why I probably...
I know exactly what you're going to say.
And now, but saying that, this Heart Like a Wheel, this one's called Heart Like a Wheel. And obviously this one probably suited Glenn Hughes. He was probably right in his zone, with this one, Heart Like a Wheel, because it's a blues song. Now, it's a Sabbath blues song though, so it's got real dark riffing overtones in it. Do you know what I mean? It's got that darkness about it. I like it, and this one really, when I said earlier on about Kerrang giving it a 5 out of 5 this album, this was the song they went on about the best song on the album from what I can remember. But obviously, look, I'm me and blues. It's not my favorite thing. I don't mind heavy rock or metal mixed with a little tinge of blues, but this is a proper, the way the rhythm is, it's a proper blues song, but with a dark side. Great vocals, by the way. I mean, just amazing all the way through the album. It's 6.5 minutes, and you get 2 like extended big solos of basically Tony Iommi jamming. Yeah. It's just not my sort of thing, but I can understand what people like about it. And it ain't the first time Sabbath have dealt in blues either, is it? Because especially like with Ozzy, when the blues was quite a big thing of their music, back then.
That's where they came from. I mean, before they were Black Sabbath, they were called Earth, and before that, they were called the Polka Tolk Blues Band.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, blues and jazz were where their influences came from, way back when. I mean, Tony Iommi talks about the Black American blues players being some of his biggest influence. So, I mean, he clearly always had that influence, but he couldn't always let it shine, within the confines of being Black Sabbath. But being that this was, again, intended to be his solo project, he wanted to stretch his wings a little bit. And, people talk about this album being so bluesy. It's really not, except for this one song that we're talking about.
Totally agree that this song actually sticks out like a sore thumb for being the blues.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, as we're talking about each of these tracks, this is really, I'm just thinking about this, and I know we've spoken about it being like a solo album. That's why people don't like it. Although nearly every track is a brilliant track, I suppose it's quite disjointed, isn't it?
It is.
That's all you could say, because you've got those fast, really rocking tracks that would fit on a Dio album, like you've spoken about. You've got like a ballad, which is quite emotional. You've got a blues track. You've got a really commercial track.
Yeah,
So
it had a lot of variety on it. It was not stuck in one sound or one genre or one influence. He, like I said, he wanted to spread his wings, and he dabbled in a little bit of everything on this album.
Yeah.
Even though they don't sound similar for the most part, I think collectively they created a hell of a product.
I totally agree. And it's actually, like I said before, it's one of my favorite Sabbath albums, because I'm not looking at it as if to say, does it sound like a Sabbath album? I'm just looking at it on what it is, which is a great album.
Yeah, I mean, I guess he caught such, I guess at this point in time, he caught such flack because this was the first album where he was the only original member.
Yeah.
Of course, as time went on, Eternal Idol, Head of the Cross, Tear, he was the only original member there, but I guess people kind of got used to the idea by that point, or acclimated to him just being, the last of the original members, that they didn't have as much problem calling those Tony Martin era albums Black Sabbath. But, again, I'll take my hat off to him for what he did to continue the legacy, even though it had to be really hard at this point in time.
Yeah.
The 80s, mid 80s were chock full of so much competition, in the heavy metal world. I mean, 86 was your favorite year for music.
Yeah.
That was a tough time to try to put out a Black Sabbath album when you were the only original member, and get people to buy it and believe in it. And whether they liked the music or not, they just wouldn't give him the chance.
It would have been so easy for him just to, like you said, say bollocks to it all and do something else, for sure. But I'm so glad he didn't. And for me, in 86, I don't know where I'd rank this album in my 86 albums, but man, it was I wore this one out. I really did in 86 and onwards for the rest of the few years. So
I bought this. I think this was the first one, like I've said in the past, first album I bought was Live Evil. I later went back sometime later and bought Heaven and Hell Mob Rules. I bought Born Again probably within the year after it came out. But Seventh Star I bought, of course we didn't have internet back then, but I remember walking into a record store and just thumbing through the albums, and I saw the album, and it had only been out a week or so, 2 weeks maybe. And I bought it almost instantly, after it was released. Of course, I bought it on cassette, and I'm pretty sure I wore out my first copy. I had a couple of cassettes through the years. I liked it from the first time I heard it. Back to this song. In the Finhold era, it was called Love on the Line. But again, it was the same song structure. Jeff Nichols, again, wrote the lyrics to this one. He got the idea Heart Like a Wheel from a movie he had seen about a female race car driver. And the lyrics were basically about lost love and, ready to roll, That's where that one lyrically came from.
Just a quick one before we move on to the last little bit. Do you rate this track?
Yeah, I haven't actually ranked them. This one was probably be, maybe number 4.
Yeah.
Just glancing at it right now without thinking about it.
For what it is, it does a brilliant job. A blues
Yeah, it's just got a
heavy.
groove. It's just got that groove, that
Yeah.
bluesy groove, but it's just got a groove that makes you want to bounce your head, not bang your head, just kind of bounce your head.
So, mate, we didn't actually. I don't think. Well, I didn't. I didn't say to you, "Let's do this on purpose" for the way we sorted the tracks out. But I'm glad we did. So we're going to do a bit like we did. It's not exactly the same, but as the Sphinx, the Guardian, and the Seventh Star. You're going to talk about tracks 8 and 9 because they are, as you're going to explain, together as such. But talk us through 8 and 9, mate.
Yeah, Angry Heart.
Remember how we used to be? I thought the only thing that mattered was me.
I've said it before. I'll say it again. This is my all-time favorite song. Not just my all-time favorite Black Sabbath song, my all-time favorite song. Darren mentioned in the live stream we did the other day that Journey Separate Ways was his all-time favorite song, and that has never changed for him. I'll say the same thing about this song. I know I'm the Tony Martin freak, but my favorite Black Sabbath song and my favorite song of all time is Angry Heart from Seventh Star with Glenn Hughes. Glenn fucking Hughes. It makes the hair, if I had any hair on my head, it'd make the hair on my head stand up, but makes the hair on my arm stand up every time I hear it. The riff in it is just so, I can't think of another word other than infectious. It's a simple riff. It's not complex. It's another one of those medium pace songs. It's not super fast. It's not super slow. It's just right there in the pocket where it needs to be. I never get tired of hearing it. Lyrically, it was written. Jeff Nichols had just lost his mother, and Tony Iommi had just lost his father. And so the lyrics of this and the other snippet that I'm getting ready to mention are based on the loss of their parents. Angry Heart fades out and then fades into a short, mostly acoustic piece called In Memory. Now, I don't know why they listed them as two different songs. I guess they had a reason for it. But to me, it is one song, even though it's credited as two different songs. You can't have one without the other. If you play Angry Heart and just stop it, it sounds like somebody cut the tape. And if you listen to In Memory without Angry Heart in front of it, you clearly know something's missing here. I watched somebody did a reaction several months ago, and they just did In Memory.
I bet you've done your fucking nut.
Yeah. As I watched it, they were like, I like this, but it sounds like something's missing. I'm like, of course, but you got to listen to Angry Heart in front of it.
Yeah.
You can't have one without the other. It's just the perfect transition between those two songs. There's no pause or anything that makes it awkward. It's just seamless.
I love the way that In Loving Memory it like glides along on that.
Yeah, it's just brilliant.
Did I say In Loving Memory or In Memory? Because In Loving Memory
it's called In Memory.
In Memory is In Loving Memory is an Alter Bridge song, so I'm just getting all fucked up there. But
I
In Memory,
I knew what you meant.
Yeah.
But I should also mention Glenn Hughes actually played bass on these two songs. I forgot to mention early on, that was another reason Glenn did not want to go on tour, because Glenn had always played bass on stage. Every project he had been in before, he played bass as well as sang. He always said he needed that bass to keep him grounded. Well, with Black Sabbath, he knew he wasn't going to be playing bass because they had Dave Spitz on bass. Black Sabbath couldn't be a 3-piece band, or at this point it would have been a 4-piece with Jeff Nichols being a member, but anyway, these two songs were recorded. These were the last two songs they recorded on the album. These did not exist during the Finhold era.
Oh, okay.
These were all new songs. Dave Spitz by this time had already left the studio. So when they did these last two tracks, Glenn Hughes actually played bass on these two tracks. These are only two tracks he played bass on the album. But again, I could go on for an hour just on this one song or two songs, however you want to characterize it. But I love it.
It is brilliant, and that I mean, to go back to Angry Heart, that chug in that song, and then just the little riff at the end of that chug each time, like you said, it's infectious.
Yeah.
And you have sort of got like maybe a Hammond organ in that bit as well over that riff.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know what it is.
Not overpowering.
I totally agree with it. It's the perfect song, and perhaps the best song on the album for me as well. And I mean the lyrics in Memory, which but basically sounds like he's so emotional in it, Glenn Hughes, and it's still haunting me. It is a haunting song as well. It is the way it just glides along on that dark sort of absolutely superb ending to an album. I mean, and we go on about endings to albums, don't we? And I like it when it's something either ends mellow. I like that epic mellow sort of ending. Absolutely great, mate. I mean, I don't know if we're in the total minority here or not, but I mean, we just love the album, don't we? And it's just weird how we found each other on here, and then we just love the album so much as well.
Yeah, I remember when we did the Sabbath, when we ranked our top songs from each album, you and I did not discuss it.
No.
Prior, you had no idea I was going to pick in or Angry Heart, and I had no idea you were going to pick it. But yeah, when I gave my selection and you said, yeah, that's mine too, that kind of blew me away, because I was not expecting that, because this song, I never hear this song mentioned anywhere. Obviously, it never got played on the radio.
No.
I think when Glenn, during the 5 shows that Glenn did, I think they did this song a couple of times live. But other than that, the song has just faded into history, and
mad, isn't it?
I hate it because it's just too good a song to not be recognized. Anytime somebody asks me, what's your all-time favorite song? I name this song. They don't have a fucking clue what I'm talking about. Even if they're a so-called Sabbath fan,
it's good though, because it probably feels more personal to you. If you fucking come out with like, I don't know, Paranoid or something like that, every fucker's, but how much, even if you talk about that, the difference between this and some of the classic songs, this just smashes things out of the park, and it's just not even recognized. It's a shame.
I've never been one to pick the popular choices or the big hits. I like a lot of the stuff that has been released over the years, but most of my favorite songs are almost always deep cuts.
Yeah, but I'm the same as you. I'm exactly the same. They're the ones that sort of grab you over time as well, and they're not instant because the hits are too catchy, if you like, and you're bored within a little while, aren't you? But
right. I could listen to this like I keep going back to Darren, that Darren keeps going on and on about separate ways, but I'm the same way. When this song ends, I can instantly hit play again 10 times in a row, and I don't get tired of it.
Brilliant. Absolutely superb, mate. It's been brilliant running through this underrated, forgotten album, I suppose you could call it.
Before we wrap it up, I wanted to mention too that even after the turmoil of Glenn's departure, which I didn't mention, Ray Gillen, of course, came in to replace him on tour, did a phenomenal job. He was a totally unknown singer out of New York, New Jersey area. Did an incredible job finishing up that tour, and then stuck around, did some demos, of course, for the Eternal Idol, which ended up not getting off the ground with Gillen. But anyway, years later, Tony and Glenn Hughes mended their fences, and did some other projects that I'm assuming you've probably heard at some point in time. If you haven't, you need to listen to them. In 1996, they did a project that got shelved, and somebody released it as a bootleg. The bootleg was called Eighth Star, and they eventually released it officially. They called it the DEP Sessions. And then in 2005, they did an album called Fused, and these were both under the Tony Iommi, Glenn Hughes banner, but both excellent albums. Not quite the same type of material as Seventh Star, but very, very good stuff in their own right.
Very cool. Very cool. I haven't heard either of them.
Well, if you like Seventh Star, you ought to listen to them. Yeah.
There you go.
Fused is heavier. The DEP Sessions were a little more mellow. But, both of them great albums. Glenn's voice again, just stellar.
Yeah, it is now, isn't it? It is now. I mean, I might not like everything he does musically, but great vocals, no matter what. No matter what. Well, I just want to know if we've convinced anyone, mate.
All we can do is try. You know?
So, well, let us know. Like, if anyone's, watches this video, let us know in the comments whether how you rate this album. Do you think it's not all that? Do you think what we think? I mean, there are going to be some people out there that think the same. And I think a lot of it just comes from the fact that, like you said, he was on his own, basically, with brand new members. It was a different sounding album, and people just don't like to think of it and rate it highly. I just think that's what it must be, what it is, because the material's there. Yeah. It just sounds different. Any last words from you, mate?
No, just like you said, I hope we turn somebody onto it. It's just too good an album to be kind of slagged off, and if nobody's ever listened to it, at least give it a chance. Whether you a lot of people just aren't going to give it a chance because it wasn't Ozzy.
Agreed.
A lot of people didn't even give Dio a chance, as we know. So
yeah,
some people you're just not going to change your mind. But if you listen to it with an open mind for what it is, and you don't even have to think about it being called Black Sabbath. Just listen to the music, and if it doesn't speak to you, it doesn't speak to you. But I don't see how
it can't
80s metal and not find something on this album to appreciate it.
I totally agree. And I've got to say, I'm fucking impressed with your, I mean, I don't think you've got any notes there, have you?
I've got a few over here.
I didn't see you look at them. So I know you're my Black Sabbath expert, mate, but I was totally impressed with the detail you're giving there. Absolutely amazing. I've learned a load of things about this album as well. So thanks for that, mate. And comments below as usual. Let us know what you think of this album, and we'll see you soon.